Hello everybody, welcome to another video by Liminal Spaces. So today we are talking about Strange New Worlds, Lost in Translation. This is episode 6 of season 2, so we've almost made it through the first season and the second season, which is great, because the new season probably is going to be announced pretty soon, so I want to make sure we get these done. So we're having a very interesting discussion on my last video, which was about the Doomsday Machine from the original series, about how the new Star Trek has less mystery than it feels like the older Star Trek had. And we're talking about how that's probably due to the fact that they don't have science fiction writers helping out the writing team coming up with their ideas. And I think that that's really, really true. I think that that's a big deal. So I want to kind of look at this episode through that lens. I think this is a great episode. I really enjoyed watching it. It's got tons of heart, just like all the other episodes, right? But I want to talk about the science in it and the mystery of space that's kind of lacking and has been lacking for Strange New Worlds. So the basic premise of this episode is there's a group of aliens who live in another dimension, and they figure out a way to punch a hole into our dimension. And the only way that they can kind of exist here and try to stay here is to attach themselves to an atom. So they have punched all these holes between their dimension and our dimension, and they've attached themselves to all these atoms. Now, where they're attaching themselves is a large dust cloud in the Milky Way galaxy that is made up mostly of deuterium, which is, of course, the main fuel source for starships. So they've attached themselves to these atoms that are inside the molecules of deuterium, and when starships scoop up that deuterium to use it as fuel, it tortures them and kills them. So they try to communicate with us, and the only way that they can make this communication is by showing specific people. There's only a few people who can actually hear this. By showing specific people these horrible images. And the images are horrible, of course, because they are being tortured and killed. So there's a few people within Starfleet that are losing their minds. Their brains are literally deteriorating because of this method of communication that's being used. And they end up killing people around them and sabotaging the ship that they're on or the deuterium mining base that they're part of. So that really sounds incredible. To be honest with you, I really like this weird sci-fi story. The problem is, all that I said was just a couple of lines within the episode. The actual plot of the episode is that Uhura isn't getting enough sleep because she's been working really hard, and because her friend Hemmer passed away, of course. And the aliens start trying to communicate with her. So she starts hearing this weird noise and having these rather terrifying visions. And everybody believes that she's just exhausted. Nobody takes these images that she's seeing seriously. They just say, oh, you probably have deuterium poisoning, you're tired, go get some rest, go get some rest, go get some rest. So she ends up kind of disobeying direct orders, not getting rest, and has to kind of become a detective on her own to figure out why she's hearing these weird noises and why she's seeing these terrible images. And all the images are personal to her. She sees Hemmer as a zombie, and she sees her dead parents and things like that. And Kirk comes aboard, and this is where they kind of meet, Kirk and Uhura. And they get off to a rough start. He kind of hits on her, which makes her feel weird. And then she has a vision while he's pursuing her, and she ends up punching him and breaking his nose. It gets really odd. So then she fixes his nose, and they decide to kind of be detectives together to figure this out. The first serious conversation that they have is she tells him about a vision, and he says, "You must be tired." And she says, "So you don't believe me?" And he has to step back and get himself together and say, "Yes, I do believe you. Let's look into this." All of which I'm not the biggest fan of that kind of a plot, right? I feel like it's kind of a trope to have the good guy be thought of as the bad guy. And the good guy kind of has to prove their own innocence and then solve the problem. It's not my favorite trope in science fiction or superhero movies or whatever, right? I like the good guy to be the good guy. I don't like the confusion of, why is that good guy doing bad things? Now we hate that person, right? It's kind of silly. But I feel like Uhura is kind of in that position. But Kirk is helping her out, and they're being detectives together, and they look into the medical logs of the station that they're helping, right? They're there to assist a station get online so that it can mine this deuterium out of this dust cloud. So they check out those medical logs, and sure enough, they realize other people have gone through these same symptoms, right? And right at that time, they actually catch someone sabotaging the station. So they bring that person on board. They realize that Uhura is in the same situation. That person kills somebody and then ends up sabotaging the ship, and that kills them as well. So now they're dead. And Pike is very nonchalant about all of this. I feel like the most direct solve would be to get Uhura out of there. Put her on a shuttle, fly her as far away as possible. Right? Now, that may not be the best solution because they do want to solve the problem. But Pike is like, don't worry, you're not going to get as far gone as that guy was. You don't got anything to worry about. Just keep on working on it. I'm going to go work on the station. You know, it's a very strange attitude toward this entire problem. Now, fortunately, Uhura eventually figures out that someone is trying to communicate with her. And the way they figure this out is they go talk to Sam Kirk. And Sam explains that there's a theory that there might be aliens that can come from other dimensions, attach themselves to atoms, and they really probably wouldn't be able to communicate with us. So maybe that's what's happened? So Uhura realizes, okay, they're trying to communicate with me. The images I've had in my mind must tell the story of we feel trapped, we're being tortured, we are dying, save us. So Uhura runs up to the bridge. She says, we need to stop the station. Pike says, it's too late. We already turned it on. So I guess it's physically impossible to turn this station off, I guess, which is very bizarre. But she's like, all right, then we have to destroy it. And luckily, at this point, finally, Pike says, are you sure? And she says, yes. And he says, okay. What do we do? And she says, launch torpedoes at it. And he does it. And I love that. I feel like that's a very important part of Star Trek, that the captain trusts the crew, right? And the crew, of course, trusts the captain. But that trust needs to be there the whole time. If any ensign runs on the bridge and says, there's an intruder on the ship, and they ask the computer, is there anyone new on the ship? And the computer's like, no, it's just our normal group. The captain needs to say, I believe you, go to red alert. Period. Right? They can look into whether the person is crazy or not, of course, but they need to take those precautions. They need to go to red alert. They need to take everything seriously. And I don't feel like this episode really did. And that kind of bothered me. And that's just me personally. The episode is good. It's well constructed. It's got a lot of heart. It's neat to see Uhura and Kirk finally meet. It's neat to see Spock meet him as well, right? He watches Spock play chess, and he's better at it than Spock is. So it's neat to hear Kirk's kind of commentary on Spock playing chess. Because Spock beats everybody right now, but he can't beat Kirk. And I think that that's a neat dichotomy for those characters. I like that. But the way this episode is structured, I feel like really does take away the mystery. Who are these aliens? Why are they here? Are we going to be able to communicate with them? You know, I'm afraid they're just never going to bring them up again. And all we got was like these 2 sentences of this kind of fascinating scientific story. So I really hope that Strange New Worlds can kind of embrace the science fiction a little bit more than they are. I was reading some statistics. We, of course, found out that Lower Decks is being canceled. And the reason that was given for it being canceled is because its initial announcement is what got people to sign up for Paramount Plus. Creating new seasons does not generate new subscriptions, at least in their minds. Now, personally, I don't really believe that. I believe that a show takes a while to really get on its feet and to really become successful. And if they could use new seasons of successful shows to generate new subscriptions, I believe that would really work. But to just say, no, the first season's the only thing that matters. I mean, what it's leading us to is they're only going to create shows that are 1 season long, right? We're just going to have 10-hour movies. That's it. The idea of a TV show is going to become a thing of the past. And I feel like that's really wrong. And I don't believe that will actually happen because I believe that they'll figure out that they're not making money. You know what I mean? It's not working. Subscriptions aren't generating the money that they need to continue to make these very expensive shows that they're making. I honestly believe they're doing this wrong. You know, they need some affordable, long-running shows that people get addicted to and want to see in the future. So they subscribe and stay subscribed. And they can generate new subscribers by the success of these long-running shows. So I read some stats that Strange New Worlds, when the first season was announced, it generated a ton of subscriptions. It was a very successful streaming show for the first season. But I couldn't find anything about later seasons, which leads me to believe that this show is sort of following that model. They're just writing this kind of soap opera stuff because that's what shows are supposed to look like, and hoping that they come up with a new idea for a new show that can get them more subscriptions. And after what happened with Prodigy, where they ended up canceling it because they realized they got all the subscriptions from it that they were probably going to get. So they canceled it. Some people freaked out. There was petitions, and they ended up being able to sell it to Netflix, right? So not only did they get some subscriptions for creating the show, but on the back end, they got this kind of cash bonus for creating this show that people kind of like. And Netflix can then gain some subscribers for creating a new season. I'm afraid that that's going to turn into some kind of weird model where you subscribe to one place for the first season, then they cancel it, sell it to another place, and then you go and subscribe to them for the second season. And of course, the problem with that kind of a model is they may not keep all the same people. the show won't grow and become what it truly can because they're starting over every time they go somewhere else. I mean, they have now canceled Lower Decks. I feel like they're waiting for this little uproar to happen and some petitions to get signed so that they can turn around and sell it to somebody else. And I'm cynical. I'm being cynical about it, I'm sure. I really hope that Strange New Worlds can get a little more scientific and a little more mind-blowing so that it can be as successful as the original series and particularly as successful as the Next Generation. Because if it can reach the level of the Next Generation, then I believe they can create a cliffhanger that will bring new people to subscribe to see that show. I hope you guys enjoyed this. If you did, please hit the like button. If you'd like to see more like this, please subscribe. We have tons of content like this. And have a great day.